Alright, welcome to the video of 4.2, the area of a triangle. So basically this is another formula you'll have to learn. I highly suggest that you start a Quizlet or something, note cards, however you want to do it, of all the different formulas so that you're not getting behind as we go throughout the chapter. So the key idea here is, in words, the area A of a triangle is 1/2 or half the product of its base B and its height H. So if we were to look at this, algebraically, it would look like this. Area equals 1/2 times base times height. We could also say it looks like this, if it helps you kind of look at it. So we're multiplying 1/2 times whatever the base is times whatever the height is. So kind of like a parallelogram, except for now we're using this part and we're kind of cutting it in half. Example 1, finding the area of a triangle. So if the directions said find the area of a triangle and they gave you this triangle, you would complete the problem like this. So we would start with our A's. A equals, we always write the formula first, 1/2 times base times height. The next A would be plugging in those numbers. So we don't have to do anything with the 1/2 because we know that will always stay true. In parentheses, I'm going to put in the base. So looking over here at what we have, we've got our base down here and we've got our height right here. How do I know that's my height? Because it's part of the triangle. Well, we're showing that we have this little square here. That's showing us that this line and this line create a 90-degree angle. Because of that, the height is your top one. Now, what if you were like, I'm so confused, I don't know which one's my height, which one's my base? If you were given two numbers, would it really matter? No, because you're putting them, you're actually right, it doesn't matter because it's multiplication. So our height, or our base in this one happens to be 5, so it's our 5 inches, times our height, which happens to be 8. Now from here, there's two different ways you can do it. I always suggest multiplying your base and your height first, and this is why. We all know order of operations says to go from left to right if it's multiplication. However, because it is multiplication, and we could switch the order, we're going to multiply our 5 times our 8 first. So we're going to put our 1/2, then we're going to multiply 5 times 8, which equals 40. Now, it's easier to multiply 1/2 times 40 than it would be to actually break up 1/2 and multiply it by 5. Okay, because you're going to get a decimal this way. So now we get down to our area equals. We take 1/2 and we multiply it by 40. So you say, well, there's a couple different ways you can do this. I don't know how to do this. So if you have it that way, you can take 1/2, multiply it by 40, and make 40 a fraction. You could do some cross factoring. 2 goes into 40 20 times. So now I have 20 over 1, which just equals 20. Or you could take and make your 1/2 a decimal. If I were to do it that way, then I could say 40 times 0.5, or 5/10. Then it just becomes 5 times 0 is 0, 5 times 4 is 20, and then I have one spot to move my decimal, and I come up with 20 as my answer. So in both situations I come up with 20. Or you can mentally just say, well, what is half of 40? Half of 40 is 20. I'm not completely done because on a test or a quiz you'd be marked half off if you didn't put inches squared. We're talking about area. That should right away indicate that you have to have your inches squared. So that's how you solve it. There's a couple different ways that you can work with getting to these points. However, you still need to multiply them all together. So let's look at another example. This is actually example 2 in the book. I wasn't going to write it out that way, but it's just another example with this type of triangle. So like before with the parallelograms, this is very similar. You're just seeing your height in a different place. So instead of putting it right here, okay, you can't put it straight up because that's not giving you the height of the entire triangle. So you'd have to put it at a point, oops, at a point where it comes down and it's perpendicular to your base. That's a really important thing here, is that it's perpendicular to your base. So the first thing you're going to start off with is your A equals 1/2 times base times height. Your second A would be plugging in your blanks. So I've got my base and I've got my height. My base in this situation is my 12. It's representing this line right here, 12 meters. My height is my 9 meters because that's what's being represented right here is my height. Again, here's an indicator of where your height is. So I'm going to put those in, my base being 12 and my height being 9. Again, here we have an opportunity to solve 12 times 9 first, or we could we could split 12 in half right here because it's an even number. So what I could do, I'm going to do it this one the opposite way of what I did last time. So instead of saying 12 times 9 first, I'm going to do 1/2 times 12 first. 1/2 times 12 would just be cutting 12 in half, so it becomes 6. So now I have 6 times 9. I solved this part first. So now I have 6 times 9, and 6 times 9 equals 54 meters squared. So I do highly encourage that you try to find how to do it mentally first, but if you can't, then do the math out. You could have done 12 times 9 first if you wanted to. You could have done, 12 over 1 times 1/2 to come out with 6 if you wanted to, just to check your work. There's no harm in doing that. I'd rather see that than see a wrong answer. Alright, here's one more example for you with a different type. This one, instead of having just the base and the height, it also has another measurement for you. So now to solve this one, we have to figure out which numbers am I using. So I'm going to start off with my A. A equals 1/2 times base times height. My second A, meaning the area, would be 1/2. I got to plug in my base and I got to plug in my height. So my base, if I remember correctly, Mrs. Taylor told me it's got to be the height has to intersect the base at a perpendicular angle. So if that's true, let's look at this. Here's my height in the middle, right? So if I extended this line up, is that perpendicular? That means you have all 90-degree angles? No, you don't. So this one is a number we're not using. So my base becomes this because my height continues down and it comes in at a 90-degree angle. That's what's great about this little indicator here. So my base ends up being 10 and my height ends up being 12. So again, you can do this a couple different ways. You'll get the same answer. I could just take, 1/2 times 10 equals 5, because I know half of 10 is 5. And then I could still multiply it by 12 if I wanted to. And then 5 times 12 is 60. You're going to remember, don't forget what my units are. So it would be meters squared. So don't let a number like that throw you off. Alright, here's a couple practice problems to try. Here are a couple practice problems for you to try, and the next page will have the answers. So I just want to say this because last time I had a couple issues with it, but this line here is 4 feet, this line here is 11 feet, this line right here is 22 meters, and this one right here is 10 meters. And here are the answers for you. Alright, make sure that you took all your notes and you did these 2 problems, and you're all set.